Welcome back to the Sewillow YouTube channel. My videos are usually sewing or gardening related, but today we're doing more of a fabric craft project for Christmas. The good news is that this giant bow can be made without any sewing at all. I simply chose to finish my raw edges with a sewing machine because it was quick and easy for me, but you can absolutely use no-sew methods if you prefer. Before we get started, I also want to mention that my newest sewing pattern is now available, a set of velvet fabric Christmas baubles. One of them is actually a plush stuffed bow which pairs beautifully with today's giant bow project. I'll link the pattern in the description below if you'd like to sew your own decorations. This project was inspired by a post I saw from Estelle Manor in Oxfordshire, which funnily enough is near where I used to live. Their manor house is decorated with a huge blue bow on the front, and I instantly wanted to recreate the look in red for our own front door. To make the bow, I purchased 3.5 meters or about 4 yards of liquid satin polyester fabric at 150 centimeters wide. I divided the fabric into 3 equal strips, so each measures 50 centimeters wide to give me 3 strips at 3.5 meters long. 2 of these strips will be used for the bow tails, which will drape around the entrance, and I finished their long raw edges using the rolled hem setting of my overlocker. But if you don't have an overlocker, you can sew a rolled hem by machine or hand. You can use iron-on hemming tape or skip finishing completely if your fabric doesn't fray that much. Keep the 3rd strip aside for the bow itself and the center band of the bow. For the structure of the bow, I'm using PVC wire netting. The roll I'm using is 50 centimeters wide and comes in a 10-meter roll from our local DIY shop, but you'll only need around 2 meters. You will also need some wire cutters and a glue gun, or you could use double-sided super glue tape. I want my bow to be about 70 centimeters wide. To create that, I unrolled enough mesh to fold into a round tube that measures around 70 centimeters across. So I roughly used 150 centimeters of wire mesh length. Using wire cutters, I snipped along the mesh joints and then wrapped the loose wire ends around each other to create a stable tube. If you're working with children, I recommend gardening gloves. Those wire ends can be a bit sharp. Position the joint seam so that it sits at what will become the center of the bow. As the fabric measures 50 centimeters and the mesh is 50 centimeters, I recommend folding the top and bottom edges of the mesh slightly inwards. This also creates a nice edge to roll your fabric ends inwards and adds more structure to the bow shape. You'll notice that even at this stage, pulling the center together already creates a lovely bow shape. With the center seam still positioned in the middle, fold the wire ends downwards around the other side of the bow shape to secure the center seam. Now you're ready to attach your fabric. At this point, I need to add that if, like me, you're using thin fabric, you will want to wrap your wire mesh in plastic, like plastic wrap or a black bin bag or old plastic bags. I initially didn't do that and then realized the fabric would in wet weather start to mold over the mesh and look lumpy. But if you're using thicker fabric like fleece or felt, don't worry about this step. You can see the plastic lining step later on in the video, but just know it's much easier to do at this stage before the fabric goes on. Laying your fabric strip right side up over the mesh, add small dots of hot glue along the folded top mesh edge on the inside and press the fabric around the folded edge inwards and then press down to secure it with the glue, taking care not to burn your fingers. If you don't have a glue gun, Gorilla Glue super glue tape works well as a no mess, no heat option and helps if you're doing this with children too. So repeat the glue and folding the fabric along the bottom edge. Then flip the bow over and wrap the fabric around the back, gluing it down along the inside edges once again of the folded mesh. Continue wrapping and gluing until the whole structure is covered. Then trim away any excess fabric at the center and set the excess fabric aside. So it's at this point that I noticed the fabric was sitting a bit lumpy on top of the mesh. And as you can see, to fix this, I peeled up one side, added a layer of black bin bag on the front of the bow over the mesh, and then re-glued the fabric to the inside as before. The difference was immediate, and you can see how much softer the fabric gathers when we draw in the center of the bow. We'll now create the center band by using a length of leftover fabric, which we fold in half right side out, and then bring the raw edges to meet in the middle. I also added another layer of plastic inside the center band because the satin was so flimsy. With the band lined and edges folded over to the center, tie the fabric strip around the center of the bow to cinch it together. I tied the fabric ends in a simple knot at the back and added glue to secure everything in place. Once secured, take a moment to shape the edges of the bow to puff them out. To add the tail ends, flip the bow over and attach the 2 long strips you hemmed earlier. I glued mine directly to the back using plenty of glue dots so they stayed as long as possible. If you want a neater finish, you could thread the tails through the center band instead. Now to add a loop to hang the bow from, I'm simply using a bit of wire that kept the wire mesh roll secure. I'm cutting a length which I'm threading through the mesh at the center back of the bow and twisting the ends together. I'll be using a nail which I'm going to put into the mortar between the bricks on the front of the house. I want to avoid damaging the lintel, so my bow will be quite high. I climbed up a ladder carefully to insert the nail and then hang the bow from.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I then take each of the tail ends and drape them to the sides of the porch. Luckily, I already had some plant climbing supports, which I could just loop the fabric over, but you could add extra nails or clips to the sides of your porch to do this. You can see our front door porch entrance is quite high, so I needed the tail end to be long, but you may not need them so long, so feel free to trim them, or you could just add more dramatic draping off to the sides. And that's it. Such a simple project and so effective. Because the bow is so bold, I've paired it with a simple green wreath made from garden knitting. Just some ivy, holly and laurel. The bow really steals the show and it's definitely my favorite Christmas door decoration so far. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more sewing, gardening and craft projects.